Go Bruins, joined by head coach Chip Kelly. Coach,
what's up, brother?
Thanks for the time, yes. Lots to talk about with your team, some changes, defensive coordinator, new quarterback, but as we talked in the spring, you told me you felt the culture was the strongest it's been since you got there. Why is that? What have you seen as you head into the season from this team?
We just have great leaders, and I think kids that understand why you go to UCLA. We're about books and ball. We've got a tremendous group in the classroom, and then that carries over to how they carry themselves on the football field. So it's, as a coach, it's so easy to coach a group of guys like that because they're just so hungry to be successful that it's really fun to be around.
All right, we'll open up to questions from the media. We'll start with Ben in the middle, in row 3.
Ben Balch, Los Angeles Times. Coach, I got something a little bit different. I want to ask about your horse racing endeavor with Mick Cronin, how that came about. You were very close to getting a horse in the Kentucky Derby. Can you take us through that and what the future is, how many horses you have and what the future holds in that endeavor?
Yeah, it's very simple like this. Mick asked me to get involved. I don't know anything about it, and Mick is the brains of the operation. So I am just along for the ride. But we have a couple horses that are pretty good. The two that are named after my dogs, Henry Q, who won the Mind That Bird Derby and just missed the Derby this year. And then we have another horse, Wilson Q, who's a 2-year-old that's got a first and a second so far and is scheduled to run at Del Mar sometime in September. But they're always scheduled to run while we're playing, so I'm not going to get a chance to see them in person. But it's something to watch from afar. But I am truly a spectator, and I am the very silent owner, partial owner in this venture.
Back row in the middle.
Will Decker, LA Football Network. Coach, I was wondering if you could talk about your linebacking room and Ken Norton Jr. kind of mentoring the likes of Adarius Muasau and Olafemi Oladejao, the transfer from Cal. What have you seen from Oladejao this spring, and what are you expecting of Darius in year 2 for UCLA?
Yeah, great question. Ken does such a great job. You know, one of the all-time Bruin greats at that position, had a distinguished career as a player, and then went on had a distinguished career as a coach, not only at the college level, but the last 10 years in the NFL, and done a great job. Darius is back for year 2. It's unique, both him and Femi transferred into UCLA, and they're the only 2 kids that I didn't have to watch the film on because we played them in person. We played Hawaii, and Darius had 10 tackles, and I kept asking why we couldn't block number 53 when we were playing them. And then in the last game of the year, last year, we played Cal, and Femi had 17 tackles against us. And then he went in the portal like 2 or 3 days later. And I mean, the kid who had 17 tackles, so I didn't have to put that tape on either. But both of them have been tremendous, you know, along with Kay Medrano and Che Bryant Struthers and John Vaughn, who's coming off of baseball. So we feel like our depth at linebacker is as good as it's been since it's been there. And Ken's doing a great job with all those guys.
Next question is front row here on the left.
Christopher Helling, right for California. Coach, you've been in the conference for a number of years. Is there anything you're going to miss about the Pac-12 when you leave next year?
Yeah, there's a lot I'm going to miss, but I'll reminisce on that after because we're not leaving right now. So, you know, our sole focus and attention is on this season. I think the league is as strong as it's ever been. I know everybody has talked about that today. So, but I'm very sentimental when it comes to my feelings about the Pac-12.
Next is from just here on the left.
Kenneth Berry, Touchdowns to Tangents Network. Coach, you sent about 8 guys to Vegas for the Shrine Bowl. A lot of leadership. When you look at, you know, how you replace that, and you look at a guy like Chase Griffin, how pivotal has he been to the program, on the field, off it, in the quarterback room, and what he's done with NIL? Yeah,
Chase is awesome. You know, he's the ultimate student athlete. He graduated in 2.5 years. He just got his first master's degree at the end of this past spring and is enrolled in a second master's. So when Chase leaves UCLA, he'll have an undergraduate degree and 2 master's degrees. He does an unbelievable job in the community, and he's one of the real true leaders of our team. You know, the quarterbacks voted him the squad leader at that position. It was a unanimous vote. They all voted for him, and I think the whole team would have voted for him. He's everything you want in a student athlete and one of the best young leaders I've ever been around.
Our next question will come over here from the far left.
Hi, Coach. Jake Merrifield, What's Bruin Show. Earlier, Coach Kenny Dillingham said that you're one of the best coaches at adapting your scheme to fit your talent. I was just wondering what your thought is on that, and also how do you think your scheme is going to adjust this year to fit this year's talent?
Did he open with that or did he finish with that?
It was in the middle. I think maybe
It was in the
Yogi
middle,
asked him. Yeah.
so I owe him $25 because I told him if he could get in at the beginning, it would have been a lot more. No, Kenny did a great job, and there's a reason he's there. But I think it's what we all learn as coaches is it's not about plays, it's about players, and being able to adapt the scheme to the talent that you have. Sometimes it may be more tight ends, sometimes it may be more running backs, sometimes it may be more wide receivers. But the guys who are really good at it, and Kenny's one of them, is always going to adapt their offense to the talent that they have available to them for that game. Because sometimes you can say, hey, we're going to be a big two tight end in this game, and then all of a sudden your tight end gets hurt. Well, you got to be able to adapt within the game to what the circumstances are. So,
Coach, you shared a quote with me last year, which is praise and blame are all the same, and it was advice towards big-time quarterbacks. You got a big-time guy in Dante Moore. He's already there, honor roll kid in his first semester. Also in a transfer quarterbacks. I'm curious for Dante, like how have you managed his approach? How have you helped him manage his approach if you've had to? Because he has a ton of attention, one of the biggest recruits in the history of UCLA.
he does. And we haven't really had to manage much because of him. He's an old soul, and he's the oldest 17-year-old I've ever met. I mean, he's got a unique quality about him. He enjoys and he's very grateful for the opportunity that he's been presented to him. He's always thankful. He's a please and thank you guy. He's just got a unique nature about him, and I think he inherently understands that I don't think he judges his life on what other people's opinions are. And I think that's really, to me, what praise and blame is all the same means, is whether someone's complimenting on what you did or someone's detracting from what you did. The person that matters to you most is you, and what is your opinion of yourself? And I've always said I'm not governed by the fear of what other people say. You got to be able to look yourself in the mirror and feel like you put in a good day's work. And if you did, put your head down on the pillow and get up and do it again. But Dante lives that every day, and it's really cool that someone at that age, has already understands that. He's really wise beyond his years.
Chip, you've talked about wanting to have the #1 character program, and I think about a guy with character. One of the players you brought, well, both players you brought today, but Leatu Latu in particular, his story and his journey. It's been well documented, but from your perspective, you coached a lot of different guys in a lot of different situations. What is it like to see somebody who thought their football career was going to be over and for him to have a second chance and play like he's playing?
It is a unique story because not many people are told that they could never play football again. But he wouldn't accept that. And to watch him work as hard as he's worked with not the guarantee that all that work was going to pay off, but he was always, I'll do my part, just let's see if there's another opportunity at this. And to watch him work, when we first got him, he wasn't cleared for contact, so we worked on the side during spring practice and didn't know if he was ever going to be cleared. And then when he got the green light to go, never been more happy for a guy that, because you saw him put that time in, and now the fruits of his labor are paying off for him. And he's a great example of stick-to-itiveness, of perseverance, of overcoming adversity. He's kind of a poster child for that right now.
Coach, you have a new defensive coordinator, D'Anton Lynn, but before we get to him, let's talk about Bill McGovern and the impact he had on you. We all lost somebody. If you ever got to know him,
I gave that look because whenever I talk about Billy, I start crying again. But amazing man and an amazing impact on so many other people. And what he did in his last year, how tough, how courageous, and how humble he was. He didn't want anybody to know he was sick. And not because the only reason was he said, I don't want my daughters to have to answer questions about me every day, and I don't want the players to have to answer questions about me every day. So our administration, our medical staff, and select coaches knew, and it was because that's the way he wanted it. But that was Billy. And when I had the conversation with him, he said, you just have to understand this isn't about me. And there was only 2 of us in the room. And I said, hey, it's not about me. But that's just the way Billy was, and his courage, his toughness, and his humility in that last year was an amazing thing. And I think the biggest thing is, and I said this at the funeral, is that man's biggest fear isn't death, man's biggest fear is insignificance. And Billy wasn't afraid because of how significant his life was. And the impact that he had on so many people is that he was at peace with, if this is what God has selected for me, I'm good. And he went out the way he wanted to go out. And it was special that I had the honor to be with him for the last 11 months of his life.
What did you learn from him, Coach? Because I know that you guys obviously had a long-standing relationship, and the loss is tremendous, and you're going to carry with him with you forever. But when you think about what he meant to you and what you learned from him, football or non-football related? What comes to mind?
I just learned, and when you went to his funeral, and there were thousands of people that, because he had an impact on so many people, and I said it at the funeral, if you want to touch the past, you touch a rock, and if you want to touch the present, you touch a flower, but if you want to touch the future, you touch a life, and that's what Billy did, and everybody he came in contact with him, he had the same effect on all of them, and good people leave a mark on everybody's heart, and that's what Billy did. He left a mark. He was gone too soon after 60 years, but what he did and the effect that he had on human beings is, if you can have half of that in your lifetime, then you've left a pretty special life.
Yeah, he impacted so many, as you know. I remember
You had him when you were at Pitt.
I met him at 15.
Yeah.
And it was instant impact, you can tell. You have one of the younger D coordinators now, D'Anton Lynn. How did you find him, and what has his personality been like in the program around these student athletes over the short time he's been there?
Yeah, I found D'Anton through Billy O'Brien and John Harbaugh, two guys that I really relied on in the search. And when I talked to them, he's 33, but he has 12 years of NFL experience. So it's a unique combination. He grew up in a football family. Obviously, his dad's been a head coach in the NFL. He was a great player at Penn State, played a year in the NFL, and then immediately got into coaching. And so for someone at that age, when I didn't really know he was 33. I knew he had 12 years NFL experience. I thought, he's a 40-year-old guy. Usually it takes a little while to get into the league, but he's really mature. He really is poised. He has a great plan. He was under some really good coaches, whether it was Romeo Cornell or Mike Vrabel when he was in Houston, or Wink Martindale and Mark McDonald when he was in Baltimore. So he's been around some really, really good guys. He's got a wealth of experience, and he's really, it's hard to picture him at 33 years old because he doesn't act like he's 33 years old.
Next question here from the audience in the third row, Ben.
Ben Balch again. Coach, a couple injury updates. Wanted to ask about Ali Cahoe, didn't play last year. What's his status? Spencer Holstidge and Garrett DiGiorgio. They may have been back at the end of spring, but.
Yeah, the last two guys were back for the end of the spring and participated with us, and we anticipate Ali will be cleared for camp.
Next question is over here on the far left.
Mike Regalado, Bruin Report Online. Coach, you lose DTR and Zach Charbonnet. Does that make this offseason difficult, knowing or not knowing who you're going to have starting at those positions this fall?
Well, the quarterback spot, I think we have to replace a quarterback for the first time since George Bush was president. And I mean George Herbert Walker Bush, not the other one. We had Dorian for 48 games, and you feel like, I started my career with Dorian, and I anticipate going to fall camp and him still being there because he was around so much. But we have a lot of depth at that position. We feel really good about how our players played in the springtime, and are excited about that group because it's as deep a group as we ever had. And we feel the same way about running back. TJ Harden is back, had a great bowl game for us, has really come along. Then we took a transfer in Carson Steele, who I think we were really, really excited about after spring practice. And then Colson Yankoff had another really good spring for us and is continuing to adapt to that position. And he's about 230 pounds now. And then also adding in Anthony Atkins, who's a transfer from Army, who's another big back, about 6'3", 245. So I think we're bigger than we've ever been at running back. We had Zach, and we were a little bit smaller. Now we got some size at that position. So there is an experience factor that we don't have, losing both Zach and Dorian. But I think the depth will shine through for us.
We go to the back row in the middle.
Will Decker, LA Football Network. I remember during the Sun Bowl, it was when Dante Moore had committed, was thinking of committing to UCLA. You said, don't sleep on Ethan Garbers coming into this year for the starting job. I'm not going to ask you to name a starting quarterback, but just talk about your quarterback, Ethan Garbers, and what he brings to your offense.
Yeah, Ethan's the one who's got the most experience because he's played for us. And in the last couple of years, Dorian, because he was such a physical player, has missed some games. Ethan's got some starts and has done some really good things for us, and will continue to thrive off of that. I thought he played really, really well in the spring. He's an ultimate competitor. So, we always tell our players who we're recruiting, who we're bringing in, and Garbs was like, great, that'll make the room better, and was excited with both Colin Schley and Dante Moore joining the group that we have. So it's going to be a healthy competition as we get rolling here in August.
Far back.
Eric Lamkus, the second Culver City Observer. Coach, you constantly redefine your offense, it seems like every few years. And I think that's a testament to who you are. So my question is, I'm curious, how do you go about challenging yourself to redefine your philosophy offensively?
I have ADD, so I have a real hard time concentrating on one thing. So it's just a matter of how my mind works that I got to change what we're doing. Now, honestly, we do it because of our personnel. You know, it's always been a personnel-driven operation. Who do we have and how do we deploy them and put them in the best position to make plays? So it'll always be driven on who we have available to us. And really, that's not only yearly, that's weekly. You know, who's up and who's available for this game, and then cater the game plan around who's available.
Front row with Dennis.
Dennis Freeman, News for Us Online. Coach Kelly, how does your program handle or deal with NIL?
Well, NIL is supposed to be dealt with outside your program. You know, I don't know if people realize that, you know, so our school does a great job. We have the Westwood Exchange that's run through our athletic department. So if businesses want opportunities to contact the student athletes in our school, they're the entity that does that. And that's really how the NIL operation works. We have a young man he mentioned earlier, Chase Griffin, who I think was the NIL Student Athlete of the Year. He had 29 NIL opportunities this past year and does a great job with it, you know, using the backdrop of Los Angeles and then using his platform as a football player at UCLA. He's really taken advantage of it. But everything we do is done through Compass, which is our compliance operation, and then the Westwood Exchange.
Coach, I'm curious, you've been around the game for a long time. Some would say college football is as popular as it's ever been. Some would say it's an absolute mess. Where do you net out on the state of the game right now?
Yeah, I think the game's as good as it's ever been. And I'm talking about the game. There are things that happen outside of the game, but things have happened outside of the game for the history of the game. You know, and you've heard me tell the story. The first transfer was Fielding Yost. He played football in 1896. He was at West Virginia. They played Lafayette. After the game, he stayed, went to Lafayette, played against Penn. They beat Penn. He transferred back from Lafayette to West Virginia and finished the season. He ended up being the all-time winningest coach in Michigan football history and one of the best athletic directors in the history of the NCAA, and actually started the NCAA. So, and that was 1896, and they had transfer portal issues. So issues outside of the game have been going on for a long time. I don't think that takes away from the game. I think the coaching is at an all-time level, and I think the player's skill is at an all-time level. A lot of it is because of the technology that's available. You can watch what other people are doing throughout the country. It was hard to get film 20, 25 years ago on what people were doing. And there's so many good young coaches coming up and putting guys in position to make plays that I think the game itself is awesome. And I think the players that are playing are awesome. And to me, that's what the story should be about. I think players should be paid. And I think the NIL part will work itself out and they'll come to some conclusion on what's equitable in that. I think players should be able to transfer. I think it's crazy that they can transfer twice. You know, you should just have one window. If you don't want to be at that school, you can leave. But don't wait till spring ball's over and then say, I don't like where I am now. I liked it 2 months ago, but now I don't like it. Like, you get a window you have one window. Let's have one transfer window. Let's have one signing date. Let's try to unify that a little bit. But I think the game itself and what happens on the field is as good as it's ever been.
Are players, given everything that is going on and the ability to leave when things don't quite go your way, or all the stuff that you talk about outside of college football, you've been in this game a long time. Do you feel like players are different now fundamentally than they were when you first got into it? Or is it still?
I think they're the same. And I just think that we all learn from lessons. So we all say, well, they shouldn't be able to transfer because if they're not happy, well, that's a lesson they got to learn, because maybe the transfer is a positive thing or maybe it's a negative thing. No one can stand there and say they have the crystal ball. It's just, that's the way it is. If I work for a company and I have a bad day at work, if I say I'm going to quit, well, good, they're not going to pay you anymore. I can quit any day I want. Anybody here can quit their job right now and leave. But you also have to live with the ramifications of that, because there's no guarantee if you quit your job that there's another job out there for you. So I think we've sped up the decision-making process for student athletes. Sometimes we buffered them at 18 to 22. They didn't have to make that. Now they have to make that decision at 18. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. You know, our life lessons that we have to teach people is that if you make decisions, you have to live with the ramifications of those decisions. And if your decision is you had a bad day because a coach wasn't nice to you, so I'm going to put myself in the portal and leave, great. Well, then if nobody offers you anything in the portal, you don't get to go back. Like, there's decisions that you make, and there's risk and reward in everything that you do. But I don't think it's as bad as everybody says it is. And I think if we can get our hands around it and make it a little bit more uniform, then I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. We still got pretty good jobs, and I still think when people are saying that coaching isn't in a great, we say no crying on the yacht. So we're in a pretty good situation right now.
We got one last one from the audience here on the far right.
Coach, good afternoon. In a real way, you changed the game when you were at Oregon, and the game kind of caught up in a way. Do you feel like you have to change the game again in order to continue to be competitive, I suppose? Not competitive,
No, our goal was never to change the game. Our goal was to get first downs. So we do whatever it takes to get first downs. So our production on offense now rivals any of the times when we were from 09 to 12. I think we were 4th or 5th in the country offensively this year. So, and our goal never was set out that we want to change the game. I don't want to change anything. I want to try to get a first down and score some touchdowns. And if it means we got to throw the ball to do it, then we'll do it. If we got to run the ball to do it, then we'll do that.
Have you met Crocky J yet? Carson Steele's little pet?
No. We're all happy that he has. It's a pet alligator that he named Crocky J because he thought it was a crocodile, which is the name. But we were all happy that he decided to leave it in Indiana. So I've seen pictures, but I've not seen Crocky J in person. So he's not coming. We were going to look into statutes in Westwood and find out that maybe you can't have a pet alligator in Westwood if he was going to bring it, but he wanted to leave it at home. He said it's like 6 or 7 feet now, so I'm not sure we wanted to see that.
We would do that feature if it ends up.
That would be. I think the two of you guys.
We'll send Nick Aliotti.
We'll send Nick Aliotti to Indiana to see the Crocky J.
Done.
I think if we can get anything done, my last request is, can we send the Pac-12 network? Can we please send Nick Aliotti to Indiana to meet Crocky J?
He's on the way, I think. Chip Kelly, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it, and we're looking forward to watching your team and talking to your players here in just a moment. But good luck this season.
Awesome. Thank you.